has my email. Why does anybody else need it?
She called me one. She called me. She's.
I want to see if the phone numbers are in there.
Pretty warm the last couple of days.
Beautiful.
I know.
Gonna stay like this till November.
Yeah, very dry.
Yeah.
Very, very dry.
Halloween. I said, well, that's the way it goes. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
What? Get into the office. Offices.
I did.
I mean,
everything's shaky.
Pep's office on the end where Pat Fox's office used to be. Okay, the office just before you
I
get.
think you need a new clock in here too.
Really?
I know. Bar time. It's
Yeah.
6:58 right now.
We need to get that one fixed. That's a cool clock.
Isn't that
I did.
pretty?
I could hear.
Let's fix it. Or wind it up.
You know anybody that can do that?
I don't think it's wrong.
I can find somebody. Sure.
Yeah.
There used to be a guy in Oshkosh. I had a regulator clock that I had to
I
have
voted
fixed
for you.
twice. And now it runs great. It's been a great firm.
Yeah.
10 years.
Yeah.
But that's an expensive clock. Boy. It'd be
Well, you're
really
back on
nice
it now.
to get that working.
That's good.
How dare you?
You don't have long life. So you guys are going to go ahead and put the furnace in and everything then? Mm-hmm. Okay. All she's got to do, Larry, is just have her sign those one of those copies and send it to me. You haven't got to give me a down payment right now.
I know. Dan, if you want to have a seat, if you want to just
That's fine. That's fine.
have their we didn't. I don't. Ruth is our remote.
So then I should plan on it though, huh? I should plan on it though. Yeah. I'm surprised Fargo didn't bid on that.
You don't have to.
I would have thought he would have bid on it for sure.
Well, we get 2 more minutes, right? Well, according to my computer, it's 7, but this is the one. All right, let's call this meeting to order. And we'll have roll call.
Mrs. Krantz.
Here.
Mr. Jones. Here. Mr. Timms absent. Mr. Piaski.
Here.
Mr. Eckstein.
Here.
Mr. Weddy.
Here.
Mrs. Plata.
Here.
Mr. King.
Here.
Mr. Waddell is absent. Mr. Crawford.
Here.
Yes.
Okay, we'll have silent prayer and followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll take public comments now, and we have Brittany Clausen.
Good evening, I'm Brittany Clausen, and I'm speaking before you tonight on some of the challenges that the Clausen Family Music Show has been facing over the past year, and looking to the County Board to approve adding the Lundberg Resort buildings to our existing conditional use permit, which reads, "Retail sales shall be contained in the existing barn and milk house area." I've prepared a report for you to review with more detailed information than I have time to discuss tonight. In 2010, historic buildings from approximately the 1930s from the Lundberg Resort on Pleasant Lake were moved to our property to be used as display buildings. These buildings are needed as on show days guests often arrive much too early. With the approval of these buildings, early arrivals can visit the walk-through displays prior to the theater being opened at 12 o'clock noon. The zoning office has not offered us much help in making this a possibility, which is why I am here before you tonight. If we can get these buildings added on to our existing permit, our fire and safety inspector can then examine the areas in the same way he inspects the barn and milk house twice a year. Our insurance company has already inspected and approved liability insurance on the buildings. All of our guests would be guided through the displays, much like the historic buildings of places like Old World, Wisconsin, and Heritage Hill. A simple examination and common sense can see that they are both safe and accessible for our guests. In addition to the troubling letters sent out by the zoning office, while I'm here tonight, I wanted to call attention to a very disturbing visit that was made to our property by Amy Bone from the zoning office. We were surprised at her arrival as no appointment had been made, and she demanded to see these buildings. This took me away from my daily operations, and my father Brent and his music students away from their music lessons. In this meeting, Ms. Bone conducted herself in an unprofessional manner, becoming irate and perverse to the point of causing my dad to walk away from the meeting. Her inappropriate behavior and remarks were unfortunately witnessed by his young music students and their parents. This inappropriate behavior, lack of professionalism, and the number of errors exhibited by Ms. Bone causes me concern about her credibility. These challenges from the zoning office, if not resolved, will force us into the closure of our business. I will await a response from the county board as to how to proceed. I am requesting your help tonight to provide approval that these buildings can be added on to our existing conditional use permit so that we can continue to bring folks from all across the country into Waushara County and provide them with a fun and entertaining afternoon filled with joy and goodness. That is what the Clausen Family Music Show is all about. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move down to,
Here's those reports if anyone's interested in looking any further.
thank you very much. We'll move on to the approval of the agenda. The agenda is going to be changed. The DEER program will be the presenter first, and then roles and responsibilities of county board supervisors will be second. So,
I'd move to approve the amended agenda.
motion by Weddy. Second by Krenz. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. All right, we have no old business. We'll go on to news. The minutes. Oh, I'm sorry. We need to approve the minutes of the April 17th, 2012 organizational meeting. Okay, we have a motion by Jones. Second by Eckstein. Are there any comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we've approved those. We have no old business, and we'll go to new business with reports by Ruth.
Good evening, everybody. The workhouse remodel has started. I'm sure many of you saw the construction workers as you were coming in and heard some of the noise. The majority of the demolition will be completed by this Thursday. The electrician has rewired the main distribution panel, and the plumber has capped off the water lines and rerouted the plumbing. The mechanical company was here last week and shut off the gas and removed the old lines to the dryer in the kitchen. There was a leak in the valve, and so that's why they had to shut off the gas to plug the line. The new ductwork is scheduled to be installed next week. The elevator is tentatively scheduled to be down starting about August 1st. So if you have meetings in the month of August for this building, please try to schedule them in an alternate location because this building will not be handicap accessible for that time period that the elevator is down. There's a conference room in the north annex on the first floor in between the health department and EMS that you could use for some meetings. And if that one is booked, let us know and we'll try to find you an alternate location that is handicap accessible. The tower project, we did get the tentative final approval from our engineers. They're going to come probably next week and do a final walkthrough on that. And so then the two towers in Plainfield and Wautoma will be signed off on and the final check will be distributed. The equipment has been installed on the Marion Tower and delivered to the Coloma Tower. This week they're working on installing it at the Wautoma Tower. So we are steadily making progress with that project. As for the telephone system with the 911, their meeting took place with CenturyLink and their engineers and the recorder company. The equipment has been ordered for the next generation 911 and should be delivered in a couple of months. So then we should have that situation resolved once we get that new equipment in. Spillman, we continue to make progress on the county and village mobile units. The villages are able to access the system from all of their desktops in their buildings, but we're still working on the mobile units for them as well as some of ours. There's a problem at the moment with a NetMotion, which is the software that allows all of the systems to talk to each other. So we're trying to work out that so that we can use the Badger Tracks and connect with the Department of Transportation and all of those things. And once we get that figured out, then we'll have all of those up and running as well. The EMD is currently on hold. Right now, the Sheriff's Department is busy trying to implement Spillman and then take care of the 911 problem. There's also some staff being hired, so that has been temporarily put on hold. I believe that the Public Safety Committee is going to be talking about that more at their next meeting. But that's the report for this month.
Does anyone have any questions for Ruth?
I guess I just have one question. How long do you expect that delay for the EMD? Are we going to be able to see it before the end of the year?
I would hope so. I'm not sure, and I'll have more information after the next public safety meeting.
There was a deadline, and I guess we should. We should keep to it.
June was the deadline for that.
I don't see what Spillman has anything to do with training. But
Now we have presentations. Leif, would you like to do the DARE program?
I guess I came to introduce the DARE program. It was something we started in 95, 96, and it was really kind of biased because I was the first DARE officer, but we've had a couple since I did it, and now Leif and Marty have done it. I'm glad to report that I think that they are by far the best DARE officers we ever had, and that hurts for me to say that, but a little bit. But they're doing a great job with the kids in the schools, and they're here to show you a little bit about what they're up to.
Thank you, Sheriff. Good evening. My name is Deputy Leif Hendrickson. It's a privilege for us to be here on a couple different levels. One, I want to thank you, the County Board. This being National Police Week, it's a special time for us as we celebrate law enforcement, so I want to thank you for your support of your local law enforcement with Waushara County. It truly is a privilege to serve here. I've been here with the county for going on 13 years now, formerly Minneapolis Police. My partner in crime tonight is Deputy Wiesner. He's going to be helping me as we kind of give you a couple different ideas of what we actually do in the DARE program here in Waushara County. I brought some good examples of some of the things that we've done, personalizing our shirts that we actually pass out to each of the students. My son's here tonight. He's a Parkside student, 5th grade. He's wearing his Wautoma shirt. But each school, what we've done is we've put their school logo right in the middle of the I Dare You, which turns out to be a personal challenge for each of these kids as we're going through this 13-week program. We're touching on a number of different very important topics ranging from marijuana, alcohol, tobacco use, bullying, cyberbullying, all those types of things. And it puts Deputy Wiesner and myself in the classroom every week for those 13 weeks. It's been a great experience, very positive in a lot of ways. One of the specific reasons, as he's holding up the different shirts, I wanted to come and thank you. If you did not realize this or not, we had the privilege this year of hosting a very special speaker for our DARE graduations. And of course, this was Ripley's Believe It or Not, King of Escapists. And you might remember former Chairman Norman Weiss, now retired, had about 25 years ago the opportunity to present and host this escape artist, and his name is Anthony Martin, here in our old jail where he had escaped from 25 years ago. And then just this last August, he did it again to celebrate the coming of the 2012 Ripley's Believe It or Not book. And of course, it was actually put in our local paper in the Argus, and we actually made Fox 11 News, which put Wautoma again back in the spotlight which was a great experience. The book here, the great donation from the Berlin Walmart, we had 6 books that were donated that have now gone into each of our classrooms. So each of the classes that both Marty and myself participated in were given one of these wonderful books for free. We've had each of our dignitaries, from our judge, our district attorney, Zalski, I believe, our sheriff, a number of our officers within the department had signed these congratulatory comments in the front of the book, and then we put each one of these in the classroom with the bookmark, which does reference Wautoma, Wisconsin, with the escape from 25 years ago. So it's pretty a neat little memento that we're able to put into the classroom. The teachers really enjoyed it, and the support that we've gotten from the school districts have really been fantastic. So it's been a lot of fun. I brought a few different fun things that we kind of present to each of our kids through the course of a year. We right now figure that each student is probably about $12.50 to finance a semester for the 13 weeks. So, in fact, we just graduated 40 from Tri-County and Wautoma just this last semester, which would put us over about 250 for the year. Of course, those numbers are going to fluctuate based on the school and the students and their enrollment for each year. So we do a number of fun things that we give out: rulers, dairy racers, things like that. We kind of challenge our kids over the course of a class lesson to wear their Dare shirts, like my son's got on. And then they're working through their workbooks, which we pass out to eventually earn a certificate of completion for graduation. And of course, each one of them are making a personal pledge that they will remain drug and violence free over the course of their life to the best of their ability. We're not naive to think that that's not going to be reality. But the great thing is, and I've said many a time, it's a privilege for us as law enforcement officers to actually go into the classroom, because in reality, it's the only area of proactive law enforcement that we can participate in the classroom and build those bridges as DARE tries to establish between the parents, the school, and law enforcement. So it's a very positive program. What we're going to do now is I'm going to turn it over to my partner here, and we're going to actually go through very briefly one of our lessons that we touch on, tobacco and you, which will be lesson 2 in our DARE book.
I'd say about 40%. And we also do an advertising, and then with tobacco and alcohol lessons, we do an advertising lesson, where we show them the bait and switch. Candy cigarettes, the products that look like what they use, bubble tape, and now most chewing tobaccos come in different flavors, like apple and vanilla and cherry blend and stuff like that, root beers and that sort of thing. And we talk about the harmful effects of tobacco. This is Leif's jar of tar that he shows them as to why the people have so many colds and upper respiratory problems, is that when they inhale the smoke, it blends with the water vapor, and it goes across their alveoli and coats them, causes it harder to breathe, and causes all the nasty health effects. Because basically, they're making tar in their lungs, the same kind of road tar that's on the road, and it's sticky and hot in the summer, and they're trying to ride their bikes or roll.
This represents 20 cigarettes for 1 year's time. 20 cigarettes in 1 year, that would be in the lungs.
And the major thing that we ask them is, you know, on the first day we get to know them, and we always ask them, you know, which tool do you think we use the most? You know, and first is the gun, the radio, this, that, the other. And what we teach them is the other DARE acronym is for define, assess, respond, and evaluate. And we go through kind of a scenario of, you know, Deputy Wiesner's driving around and there's a car accident at E and double E. So first we define it, what I say, car 20, there's an accident. And I ask kids, well, what should I do? He said, well, you should get there. I said, how should I get there? Well, like, turn on your lights, drive as fast as you can. Well, I'm like, well, we have to drive with due regard. So we define that problem. There's an accident and I have to get there. So we go through the situation time after time again, the DARE decision-making model, to assess, respond, and evaluate, because we show them that they have everything that they need just between their ears. About all of us are about the same, minimum wage from the neck down. So we explain to them that that's the most important tool that we have is what they're going to be educated on, and that tool that they can carry with them to define the problem, assess the problem, challenge or opportunity, respond in an appropriate manner, and then go back and evaluate. Does it make a good decision, yes or no? And we draw the productive loop, where they make a good decision, they go back up to the top, and they stay at the top, and their wheels keep turning. They're gonna roll along in life. If they make a bad decision, they might fall off the road, but they can always reevaluate and come back up to the top. So, you know, we're not that naive enough to think that kids are gonna make decisions correctly the first time. So we try to give them that right off the bat, and there's different situations and scenarios that we go through, not only in the classroom book, but actual acting out scenarios with the students also in different lessons. And there's a total of 16 lessons if we could teach them all, but we run our program for 13 weeks. And it varies from tobacco, alcohol, marijuana, inhalants, over-the-counter and prescription drugs, peer pressure, cyberbullying, and some friendship foundation, building healthy relationships. So that's in a nutshell basically what we teach them in 13 weeks. And it's about an hour lesson for each. So I'm in the classroom for 13 weeks. Blake is in the school much more, but I assist with Wild Rose, usually in Tacoma, the larger school districts, where there's more students and more to get through. Yeah. So that's shown here.
Yeah, very good. One of the things that we require of our kids to graduate, like I said earlier, was to make that personal pledge or statement. Before, what they would used to do is have each student write an essay out, and we'd have this ton of paperwork that we'd have to go through and check through. But what we did was we changed it up last year, and we gave the kids an option. You got one of 4 different projects that you can do. So now what we do is we call it our DARE project. We give the student an opportunity either, especially with our technology today, with our students as they're so quick to pick it up, to give a PowerPoint presentation is what you're going to see tonight. That's my son is going to kind of explain to you. PowerPoint. They can do a video presentation. They can do a trifold, like a big science type trifold poster, or they can also do the essay. So we give them the opportunity to really work on a subject or a topic that they feel comfortable in, and they get all the material down, the facts that we're looking for specifically, and then of course incorporate their DARE pledge, which is kind of the final outcome of the project. It's really amazing to see the response from both the teachers and the students when they get this project and just start running with it. We just give them what we require in it, and they just go for it. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to have my son come up. Alex, this is Alex, my son. He's a 5th grader at Parkside School. He's got the presentation that you'll see up here on the board. Do you want to say anything about it as we kind of stroll through?
I like it.
That's good.
Yeah, I hate to say that because I'm dad too, but no, in fact, this was a privilege for me to be able to be the dare officer this year and have my son in class. I know it's kind of an anomaly, but it truly was a great time. Got a bunch of great kids coming up in our schools. I don't know if we can just play through this as the presentation.
He's going to have him talk into the mic.
Microphone, sure.
How do I feel about the DARE program? I feel great about the DARE. The DARE program teaches kids what's bad about smoking, drinking, and other drugs if they don't know about it. What have you learned in DARE that can help you stay drug-free and avoid violence? I learned about the DARE, the decision-making model, which helps you to work through situations. D, define. A, assess. R, respond. E, evaluate. Why is it important to be drug-free? It is important because if you aren't on drugs, you can accomplish things you always wanted to, because all drugs do is slow you down. Tobacco facts. Exactly 3,000 non-smokers die of lung cancer every year by breathing in other people's smoke. There are 200 known poisons in one cigarette. There are more than 400,000 Americans die from tobacco-related causes each year. Alcohol facts. Alcohol can damage every organ in your body. Alcohol goes directly into your bloodstream and can increase your risk of a variety of diseases. Alcohol can slow down the body and lead to death or coma. DARE decision-making model. D, define. Describe the problem. A, assess. What are your choices? R, respond. Make a choice. E, evaluate. Did you make a good choice? I, Alex Hendrickson, pledge to be drug-free. Drug and alcohol-free.
And that last one's actually that last slide was actually a video that he put together from the iPod, tapped it into the PowerPoint, and it played it, and it was really a neat deal. You can imagine the different variety of things that we get from our students that come in, that we go through and we kind of evaluate and check, and then we actually pick 3 different project winners that we honor based on the content, the application, and the visual pop that they put together in their project. And so those are each given medals that we award for their efforts, which is a great culmination. And so your ability to allow us to have our special speaker come in, Anthony Martin, was because of the fact that you allowed us to go into our old jail just before it started getting teared apart and actually remove about 6 different items that he was looking for, as he's a collector. And so he came in and presented those graduations, 2 of them, for free, for the cost of those 6 items that were going to be trashed anyway. So I want to thank you for that, because that was a great experience, not only for our students, but especially for the adults in the room. And I would attest by the district attorney that had been there, and the judge saw our first one, and they were all eyes as we watched this gentleman escape from a straitjacket, hanging upside down from a 12-foot tripod. And it was an exciting thing to witness, for sure. The biggest thing that we do is we get to say thank you. And when we get the thank you cards from the kids coming in, based on the impact that we're having on some of these, it's just a phenomenal thing. And it really makes our job worthwhile. So here's a challenge to you guys. Anybody remember what the DARE decision-making model is? D is?
Fine.
Anybody else? A is? You're not supposed to. You're going to give them the answers. R is?
Respond.
Respond. And E is?
Evaluate.
Very good, very good. I thought I heard Mrs. Krantz here. So,
Thank you.
nice job. So that's our opportunity to be able to work with the kids and to really get in there, establish relationships like Marty had talked about, and try and hit home on some very important subjects that are very evident to these kids. It's amazing young kids that'll come up to you and say, oh, yeah, I've seen that. Or, yeah, my mom and dad. You know, and so as a law enforcement officer, we really have an opportunity to bridge some incredible relationships with these young kids and establish it from an early age. So it's very important. So on a couple different ways, I want to say thank you tonight. One, I know your support is critical of law enforcement, the DARE program, and we're going to be doing some pretty fun, neat fundraising coming up here soon. But any support that we get from the DARE program is fantastic because it goes right back into our kids, into our schools. And so because of that, we have a certificate of appreciation made out, awarded to the Waushara County Board for your significant contribution toward the success of the DARE program. Your support will help encourage our young people to lead safe, productive, drug-free lives. It's signed by Sheriff David R. Peterson, our first DARE officer, and both Deputy Wiesner and myself. So I want to thank you for that. I also know it's a very stressful job every once in a while, so as chairman, I have a little stressor that she can have in appreciation for the DARE program, that she'll remember that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll just take just a couple minutes. I wanted to briefly, if there's any questions at all of the county board. Otherwise, I want to thank you for the opportunity to be able to come and present tonight. And if there's any time where we can come back and kind of go over a topic or subject or whatever it might be, we'll be happy to do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Henriksen and Deputy Wiesner, and also thank you very much, Alex. That was a great present. Did you do all that yourself? Wow. Good job. They come a long way from construction paper and pens, haven't they? Good job. Thank you. All right, now we are going to have a presentation by Dan Borowski from Phillips and Borowski on the roles and responsibilities of county board supervisors.
Slideshow, Ruth. Go under slideshow.
May I do this from the side?
Sure, wherever you want to go.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
From beginning. There you go.
Thanks, Alex, for that PowerPoint, which is going to put mine to shame. There are no effects. Actually, there may be some somewhere in here. It sort of struck me as I listened to Alex and the program, the concept of define, assess, respond, evaluate. We just heard about DARE. In some ways, that's how county boards should be approaching problems that arise in the county, whether it be budgetary, personnel, some of the zoning issues we heard. We act as an introduction to us. We act as one, we act as a county board. We address issues as a county board. How do we address them? We define them. What is the issue? We assess them. We vote to what our response is going to be. We have our administration implement that response, and then we evaluate. Sort of a similar concept as I listen to that. So I sort of keep that in mind as we move through this program. And I'm going to do this. So today's presentation is just something that we've done across the state on the role of county boards. And the steps we're going to take through this is just a little bit of an introduction, take you through what the Wisconsin statutes say, and then talk about generally county operations. But I think what we should begin with and not forget that this is not yesterday's county board. I think a few of you have had the pleasure of sitting on the transition committee and dealing with some of the issues. But the legislation which passed in March of last year has changed the world. We are moving from a collective bargaining governed environment to one where the county can plot its course. This county board, over the last year, but particularly moving forward, your term is going to be in a new world. The decisions you make, you have far greater flexibility in terms of how you can operate county government. We're not going to be bound, other than possibly in the Sheriff's Department with their agreement, to a collective bargaining agreement which tells us how to do things. We can dictate how we do those things. But with that authority, continuing the New World Order, in terms of what do we have to look in front ahead of us, are issues on how we're going to pay employees moving forward. Are we going to move to merit pay? Are we going to keep our current and post-retirement benefits? How do we transfer employees, and so on? Are we going to cross-train employees? Are we going to look for contracting opportunities with the private sector? Are we going to collaborate with other governments? Are we going to revise the policies and the handbooks that we put together at the end of last year? We've been in collective bargaining for 50 years. We adopted a new handbook, but I think we would be foolish to think that we're going to get it right 100% the first time. So this board has a lot of issues in front of it. We know that as far as funding it goes, we're going to have less and less money. What is the challenge? Well, now we have this freedom. The question now is, how do we exercise that freedom? And with freedom comes responsibility. And so as we move forward and address issues, we may have freedom, but we have to exercise that freedom responsibly. How does a board act? You were elected as county board supervisors. You don't act individually, we act as a board. When the board delegates matters to the committee, we act as a committee, but we always act as one. And that's more critical than ever with the freedoms we have, because we now do have the ability to say, we're going to change that. But not one board member can do that. The board itself acts as one. So what is the introduction of what a county board does? The county board, and you'll see how it comes up later in terms of Wisconsin statutes, the county board is a policy maker. Your role is to not micromanage administration, staff, or county operations, but to establish policies, meaning rules and guidelines under which the county is going to operate, and which creates established expectations for performance for the administration and the staff, and to which performance of those hired to implement the policy can be evaluated. So what we're talking about with policy management is you're at the high end. And as you'll see later, you're like a legislature. You make the law, you make the tough decisions, and then you hire people like Deb, your department heads, to implement those decisions. Traditional governance, the board approves action plans and exercises oversight by monitoring all aspects of the operation. The board tries to keep up with and instruct management. Under policy governments, the board defines the goals and holds management accountable. You are the leaders. You describe what means are and are not acceptable, and the work of the board is focused on revising the desired results and means. Attention is given mainly to attending to the needs of the community served. Again, sort of back to that DARE concept: define, assess, respond, evaluate. Fits right within a policy governance. So why are we doing county board training? Well, the purpose of county board training is to help define roles and responsibilities of the incumbent and new county board members. I think one of the more important issues that plays behind all of this is that the proper exercise of board authority results in a process which is open to the public and fair to those who pay for, provide, and receive government services. What does that mean? What it means is when we act as one, when we address an issue, start with defining the issue, a problem comes to our attention, comes to the board's attention, the board can send it to its committee. Committee can then address the issue if they feel it needs to be addressed. That's in an open format. Committee makes recommendations back to the board, again, in an open session most likely, and this is a reason to be closed. But we have a process for resolving problems so that no one board member takes on the responsibility for the board to investigate an issue. So the open and fair process, I think a good example of that would be if an employee says, I have a problem with a department head, and they come to you as a county board member. And you, as a county board member, say, how do I respond to that? The wrong action is to say, I'll fix the problem. I'm going to look into it. I'm going to talk to the department head. I'm going to talk to Deb Beringer. I'm going to solve it. Well, there's other members on the board who might say that's not a problem. We shouldn't look into that. We should support the department head. So once we get astray from that process and you begin an investigation, it destroys that open and fair process. Because now an individual board member has taken upon themselves to do an investigation, has independent information that hasn't been corroborated by anyone else, and then you're going to come to the board and say, boy, this is a huge problem, I looked into it, and we have to do something. Can't work that way. That's not an open and fair process. It doesn't bring it through the proper channels to ensure that everything is out in the open, that the issue is fully examined by all board members with equal information and access, and that a decision is made by the board as a whole. So where does the concept of policy governance come from? And I'll try to rip through this a little bit because it is a little bit legalistic, but it's worth looking at anyways. Counties are a really odd type of government. Municipalities, for example, cities, villages, and others have what's called home rule authority in our Constitution. They can basically decide by the Constitution to decide the means and methods and take on and address whatever issues they want to address as long as there's no state statute to the contrary. Counties, on the other hand, receive their power through, and there's the municipal home rule, which says it gives the authority. Counties are also created by the Constitution, but they're only given the powers that the legislature gives to counties. And the Constitution defines who our officers are, and ultimately the legislature determines what our responsibilities are going to be. So counties are assigned responsibilities by the state, including the provision of social service programs, juvenile justice, senior citizen services, and so on. And you see all the different things that we as counties and county boards oversee, that has all come from the state. The state assigns and tells us what we can and cannot do. So we basically have become agents of the state. Counties are considered a body corporate, which basically means they can be sue and be sued. That's Ruth's part. Acquire, hold, lease, rent, real estate, personal property, and estate, and so on. So a county is basically like a corporation, but it's a public corporation. You can make contracts and do all the things you need to do to exercise the authority granted. Counties are given for any legislative authority or any legislative area that you're asked to provide, you're given what's called administrative home rule. Every county may exercise any organizational or administrative power subject only to the Constitution and any enactment of the legislature which is of statewide concern. And this this power is to be construed broadly. So what that basically means is that when we are given the authority to oversee a program, now funding is a different issue, but we have the ability to organize and administrate that program as we see fit. Now this is the flashy part of it. Not very flashy. But can we name the three branches of the federal government? Anyone?
Legislative and executive. No.
That's right. Three branches of state government? That's right. Three branches of city government? We'll just rip through this. We'll give you the answer. Sort of the same thing. Then we get to the county government. What are the three branches of county government? Who's the legislative? County board. Who's the judicial? The courts, but the courts are actually state courts. We really don't even have a judicial. And then who is our executive? Well, the executive starts with Deb Beringer, then moves down to our department heads. So when you look at county government, legislative is the county board, executive, which is the various forms of government, and then judicial, we don't have one. But that's important because this is, when we look at county government, we look at the structure of it, we're sort of set up like other types of government, but the roles are not as clearly defined. Our legislative is the county board, but as you're about to see, the statutes sort of blur those lines a little bit, at least initially. So we start out with the board powers. What Wisconsin law tells us is the board of each county shall have the authority to exercise any organizational or administrative power subject only to the Constitution, and so on. Very similar to that home rule. And then it says unless those powers have been assigned to someone else within the county. So the county board is really the initial, has the initial authority to do all aspects, to legislate and to execute, at least by 5951. Tells you that county boards act and are through county supervisors who are elected. And that's you. But then what it does, then what the legislature said is, but we still need to run our counties. So the legislature created 3 forms of county government. The first one, county executive, is 5917 in the statutes, and it gives the county executive broad supervisory authority, broad appointing authority. As you can see, the county executive has significant authority, can even override or can veto county board ordinances and resolutions, which the county board can then override. So the county executive is very similar to what the president would be in federal government. County administrator, a little bit less responsibility, but still the chief administrative coordinator of the county. And then you have the model that you have, which is in any county which you don't have a county executive or county administrator, you will have an administrative coordinator. What does our administrative coordinator do? Administrative coordinator shall be responsible for coordinating all administrative and management functions of the county government, not otherwise vested by law and boards or commissions or another elected officers. So that becomes, by statute, your executive branch, but just not with the same level of authority that the other 2 types have. And then you have other positions within the county. So what is the role of a supervisor? The supervisor is to serve primarily as a legislative function. A legislative function is largely limited to policy making, law making, budgetary approval, and cooperative decision making. That third point is the most important one. No operational control resides within individual supervisors. The county board acts as a whole or through committees. So again, by statute, county supervisors make up the board, but the board acts as the legislature, and no one individual supervisor has any operational authority, meaning you can't act without being within the confines of either a committee or the board itself, or having the authority delegated to you by one of those 2. So for example, if we have an employee issue or if you have a continued problem with employee issues in the department and the committee says, we're going to delegate Bob Jones to look into it, then Bob Jones has that authority delegated to him and can do the investigation. But if Bob Jones does it on his own, he has no authority to act or bind a committee or the board itself. So we act, again, as one, and that's how the legislature set it up. Wisconsin courts have also recognized what the role of a county board is. County board's role and function is primarily policy-making and legislative, while the other branches are administrative. And again, policy is defined as a high-level overall plan embracing the general goals and acceptable procedures, especially of a governmental body. It's the authority to make the laws, not enforce them, or appoint the agents charged with the duty of such enforcement. So again, county board makes policy. You set direction. The people below you enact or implement that direction. And here again, this just shows you how county boards act, primarily through ordinances, resolutions, or board actions. There's your ordinance. Resolution, I don't need to go through all that. County board organization. County board chair, obviously, is the head of the county board. And committees perform the duties prescribed to them by the county board. We have statutory committees, which I'm sure we're all familiar with. We have, somewhere of my standing committees were lost. But in any event, we have standing committees as well. So the legislature has basically told us again that we're in a legislative role, a policy-making role. So our relationship as we move forward and act as county board members must be consistent with the statutes and the Constitution. The role is that of a visionary. Now, that's my Andy Phillips line. You probably didn't know you were visionaries, but today you're a visionary. And what that means is you determine and have a vision as to how county government is going to operate. You set the goals. Again, define, assess, respond. And once you set the goals, you set your administration free to implement those goals along the guidelines and rules you've set. And then they come back to you and say, here's the result. And you evaluate that result. But the people that implement is not the county board. It's the people that the county has hired to implement. So what are the county board functions again? To involve, represent, be accountable to the public, to determine the services to be provided, to adopt a budget, to regulate, that would be through ordinances, to develop plans, in other words, to enact policy. And there's the standing committees. See, if I would have had a special effect, I could have moved that back, but it didn't work. So, now the comparison is, what is the board role versus administrative and staff roles? Just a quick story. I was in a meeting today in Wausau and with a number of counties. And one of the issues came up as to whether the county should adopt a bullying policy for its employees. And everyone in the room laughed and said, if we're going to have a bullying policy, we need a bullying policy from our county board. I thought that was interesting. They were basically saying, we get bullied by our county board, they get down, they micromanage, they're bullying us. I thought, well, then there's a problem with defining the difference between the board role, administrative and staff roles. We don't need a policy against bullying. What we need is a proper definition in those counties between the role of the board and the role of the people we hire. The board serves a legislative role. What are we going to do? Why are we going to do it? Department heads and staff serve in an operational and advisory role. When, why, and how. So staff the staff works under the county board and has an obligation to carry out those duties in a manner consistent with the policy direction of the board. What does that mean? If we decide, for example, when we are, now that we're out of collective bargaining, one of the issues would be, how do we handle job postings? How are we going to hire people when we have an opening in the county? What do we do? The county board can say, overall, our policy is going to be to favor or at least look inside first, because we want existing employees to have an opportunity to move up within the county, and then look externally second. That would be a policy decision. So department heads would have to follow that policy. But in terms of who goes through the resumes and how detailed, who we look at, how we advertise, what the advertisement says, what the job description looks like, and so on and so forth, is really something, how we define that position and look at whether the skill set fits, is really the role of the people that we hire to do those things. So the hiring process is really outside the policy. All the board should really be care about is that when Deb does her job search and the department head does the job search, that they follow the guidelines and policies that the board sets. Then they come back and make recommendations. The department heads and staff do not make policy, the board does. So if Deb can disagree with that policy and say, I don't agree with that we should favor Waushara County employees first, but that's not her decision to make, that's the board's. She has to do what she's told. She has to enact the policy. But how she does it is really within her realm. And you see the other parts of the staff, what staff does. And again, this is just sort of a good example of how the difference between policy, which is the county board role, and administrative and operations works. County board just determines what's going to be done and why, and administration determines how, when, and where. And again, this is just a little description of the differences in the roles and what the role of administration and staff is. And I'll rip through this, this is my special effects again, but I'll try to get us through this again. But this is just sort of an example of the private sector version of what we talked about. Even though counties are not businesses, they sort of do match up, county government sort of matches up with a private sector business. And you can see how that plays out. And here again, this shows you the organizational structure of a county organizational structure chart for a county without a county executive. And again, it sort of shows you the directions in which information goes and how it's implemented. And the county board sits on top as a policy maker. So again, not to harp on it, but Chapter 59 implies the following for county boards. You shall not micromanage. The division authority makes sense based on the characteristics of supervisors and department heads. What does that mean? Well, if we look at it, although many board members have their own experiences, there's a distinction between the board and staff. You look at their characteristics, staff is hired based on its education, its experience, its background. It may be bonded. They're required to remain professionally current. They may belong to professional associations. The board, on the other hand, is elected by the people, has a local connection to the people, may have individual skills and experience, but you're not being elected for any specific position within the county. You're elected to govern. So the question becomes, when you have an issue within a department, for example, the highway department, if we, from the micromanagement standpoint, the board would say, well, we should get involved in that issue. The highway commissioner's not handling it right. But when you look at the differences in characteristics, we should require our highway commissioner to solve the problem. He has the education, or she has education, experience, background, professionally current, and so on. That's why we have staff. That's why we hire administration and staff and department heads, is because they are specific. They have specific skills and experience and qualifications, which they were hired in order so that, or that's why we hired them, so they would run a department. The county board doesn't have those skills. You may have some personal skills, but that's not why you were elected, and it's not really the role of the county board. And the example I like to give, and Ruth's here today, I think that a lot of the issues that I see in terms of micromanagement will become one, and I actually had a board member in a different county very close to here stand up in the middle of the presentation and say, but I can run that department better. And I thought, that's interesting. And so I turned and I said, well, would you run Ruth's department? Do you have a law license? Can you practice law? Do you have the experience? Do you have the expertise? You know, what's funny is we might dabble in other areas as county board members, but we would never touch Ruth's department for all these reasons. So my question would be, if we're not going to practice law, then why would we practice human services or highway or zoning? That's why we hired specific people with expertise. We should oversee them and direct them, but let them do their jobs and use their skill set to achieve the goal. If they don't achieve it, then it becomes your role to evaluate, at the end of the day, to evaluate and then decide where you go next. If the job's not getting done according to the county board policy, then you need to make a change. That change is not having county board members do the work. It's finding staff who will achieve the goals that the board sets. And again, this just sort of repeats what we've been through before. We have a chain of command policy in our employee handbook, right, Deb?
Yes.
And the same thing really has to be respected here. When issues are raised before county board members, they should be referred to the appropriate source for handling. County board members should avoid engaging in individual initiatives to investigate or address issues unless authorized to do so, which I think we covered before. And following an appropriate chain of command will ensure that issues are addressed in an open and deliberate manner that is fair to all involved. Again, it's policy governance. What happens without the distinction between policy and administration? And I guess these are some of the examples. But as we move forward with the budget repair bill and the freedoms that the county has, you have a lot of things you can do here to set policy as a county board. If you want to get through all the things, all the freedoms we now have under Act 10 to essentially redesign county operations, getting into the actual implementation, having the county board get into the implementation and micromanage creates waste for a lot of the reasons that we have here. It creates inefficiency, it creates confusion, and it creates problems. And once the county board decides to act as administration, that bottom one is very interesting. You have no way to evaluate whether department heads are doing their jobs or not because you're doing it for them. So we don't even allow the people that we hired to do their jobs to do their jobs. What happens if the county board doesn't stay in its policy role? Employees spend time focusing on pleasing the micromanager versus doing their jobs. They suffer loss of morale because the skills they took years to build are being wasted. And the futility mentality sets in. Why am I even here if I cannot be trusted to do the simplest of tasks? And again, we have to trust the people we hired to do their jobs, give them the direction from a top-end legislative policy standpoint, and let them do their jobs with defined goals, and then evaluate if they've met them. If they haven't met them, then we need to start that whole DARE process again. Define, assess, respond. So, how do we move forward as county board and administration? There is a natural friction. As I showed you in chapter 59, the board's powers do give, the Wisconsin statutes do give the board some executive power. But by the later definition, that power is then divided up between administration and board. So how do we work together? It's understanding your role as a county board member and try not to interfere with that of administration. Now, there may be times if you get a report from someone that says there's something illegal going on, that may require you to make an immediate phone call or try to call the sheriff, whatever, take matters in your own hands. But other than something like that, we have to go through proper channels. You need to devote the time to do a good job, read background materials that administration prepares, admit what you don't know, do not jump to conclusions, and instead hear and weigh all the facts. And the facts need to be presented to you by your administration. Keep your mind open to change, and I think this second bullet point is really important. Understand that your administrator, and that doesn't just mean Deb, that means the department heads, are practicing a career, a highly complex one for which they have prepared with formal training, in most cases years of experience. So they are uniquely qualified to implement your policies. And again, some of this becomes repetitive. Do not become a complaint department. Communicate with staff through administration as much as possible. And that means when someone comes to you with a complaint, you don't investigate it on your own. You probably best not to even respond other than to say thank you for making me aware of this. If you think it's something that has to be addressed, bring it to the board or bring it to Deb first, and if it's necessary to an appropriate committee if it's at that level. But that will keep the proper process in place. The next one is also, I think, very important. Do not make promises outside board meetings, not only for legal reasons, but out of respect for the ethics of the situation and regard for other board members. As soon as you get a complaint, even if it's from a citizen saying, I don't like how my road is being plowed, and you say, I'm going to look into it, you are deciding for the rest of the board. And that's not how governance works. If we have a problem with plowing, we can address it at the highway committee level. We can note it, possibly give the citizen, the phone number of the highway commissioner might be the best thing you can do is have a little Rolodex of your department heads. When you get a complaint, tell them to talk to the department head. But as soon as you act on your own and say, I'll fix that, you're acting outside of your authority as a board member, and you're acting, you do not act for the board. And that creates problems if you proceed to say, I will do something or I will get something done, because you cannot commit the board that way. And again, this sort of gives you a few more guidelines as to how to handle complaints through an appropriate chain of command. And I think some of the first points are very important. If someone complains, you don't want to say, I've heard that complaint before, you're right, the highway commissioner is out of line. That's not your role. It's not a comment you should make. Take the complaint seriously. Ask the person to put it in writing if you feel it's appropriate, and then the board can handle it, or Deb can handle it in due course. Here's another thing that's a mistake that's frequently made. If you have to criticize an employee, don't call the employee out in open session. If we deal with employee issues, we deal with them in closed session. If we want to criticize an issue, criticize the work, don't criticize the employee. That's why we go into closed session when we deal with employee matters, so we can not call out the employees. Because if it's a reputational interest thing and we're wrong, it can create problems for us. Next rule is, again, don't surprise administration at a board meeting with resolutions, problems, and issues without their prior knowledge. And obviously, the reasons for that are clear. Again, we want to have full information. If you think there's an issue, go through the proper channel so we can address it with the department head, get full information, fully discuss it either as a committee or as a board, and then have our resolution to the issue, and then move forward and evaluate if that resolution worked. If it didn't, we do something else. And that's pretty much the spiel on the rules. If you need additional information, there is a lot of information regarding on the local government center websites, and even through our website, just on information through WCA, the Budget Repair Bill Consortium, on the proper roles and responsibilities of county board members, how the statutes work, and how, if you have questions on parliamentary procedure, all those types of things, they're all available. And one thing I will tell you is that you are a member of the Budget Repair Bill Consortium, which means you're one of 45 counties that are getting together to deal with a lot of the issues that you're going to be facing following the Budget Repair Bill. So Deb has a lot of information. There's a lot of publications as issues come up. There's always information out there the board can make access so that you can make full and informed decisions. So that's it. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay, we'll move on to discussion and possible action item. Motion to approve or deny the claim of Dawn and John Sable.
You all got a summary, a recommendation that I put with the packet on this claim. But basically what this is that back in 2011, last summer, we had gotten a report about a holding tank that was discharging onto the ground. And so we went out and looked, and sure enough, there was a problem. And of course, as you all know, that could lead to environmental problems and human health hazards. The tank was pumped, and the owners did follow a plan to make sure that there would be no further environmental problems at the time. Since that time, we've been trying to get a new system put in on the property, and our position is that the codes put out by the state and enforced by the county specifically state that a proper working private wastewater management system has to be installed on all property that is intended for human habitation. And so even though this property currently is unoccupied because the tenants have moved out and has not been re-rented, it is a residence, it's intended for human habitation, and it needs to have a proper working system. When zoning contacted the landowners and were unable to get a response from them, the matter was returned over to my office to try to get a response from them. And I think I sent them one letter, maybe two, asking them to make a decision as to what type of system they were going to put in. They didn't make that decision. We had never filed a court action on this matter. We had not gotten to the point of issuing a citation or filing a legal complaint against the landowners. We sent some more information regarding what our position was on the code provisions, and then it was their decision to, at that point in time, install a holding tank. Once the holding tank, they made that decision to install a holding tank, they filed a notice of injury with my office and the zoning office, indicating that they would be filing a notice of claim, asking that the county board reimburse them because we had taken away their property rights. Their claim is that if they choose to put in a mound system at a later date, now they have wasted money putting in this holding tank, and that we forced them to do this. I don't think that we forced them to do anything yet because we haven't taken the matter to court. They made that decision prior to us going to court. But as we do with all claims, we sent that to the insurance company. Our adjuster looked at it and was indicating that the insurance company felt that this claim should be denied, and it should be denied formally. So what we're here for tonight is for your decision on whether or not you would like to pay the claim or to deny the claim. They are asking for $100,000 on this claim, and once you make a decision, then that decision will be provided to Mr. and Mrs. Sabo, and then it will kick in different timelines depending on what your action is. So that's kind of the summary of what the situation is.
Do you have any questions for Ruth? All right. We have a motion.
I would make a motion to deny the claim.
We have a motion by Weddy, second by Eckstein. Okay, we have a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, now we have consideration and possible action on the following resolutions.
Resolution number 16-05-12, resolution acknowledging the commendable service of Norman Weiss as Waushara County Supervisor.
Motion by Kirschner, second by Krenz. Any discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Resolution number 17-05-12, resolution acknowledging the commendable service of William Downey as Waushara County Supervisor.
Motion by Crawford, second by Eckstein to approve the resolution. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Resolution 18-5-12, resolution acknowledging the commendable service of Frederick Gellerup as Waushara County Supervisor.
Have a motion? Motion by King, second by Krentz to approve. Any comments? Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Resolution 19-5-12, 2011 budget addendums.
I would move to approve the addendums.
Motion by Weddy. Second by Eckstein. Any comments? Any questions? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Resolution 20-5-12, resolution authorizing the creation of a limited-term dispatch position.
Motion by King, second by Kirschner. I'm assuming this is to approve. Motion to approve? All right. Do you have any questions?
Can I have an explanation, please?
Well, I'd appreciate it. It's either you or me, and
When we worked out the budget and got it down as low as we could, it required us to be at a minimum amount of staff, which works real well. We made some changes in the way our employees select vacations and some other things to ensure that we had staff on hand at all times. It requires 5 people to be on duty at all times between dispatch and corrections, and we've cross-trained enough so that would cover vacations and 1 or 2 sick days here and there. We now have a situation where we have an employee that's out for an extended period of time, 3 to 6 weeks, we're told, followed by for surgery, followed by another surgery, which will be another 3 to 6 weeks, and it's going to require to fill those positions yet, which will require paying somebody time and a half to work. If we can find somebody that would do it as a limited term employee, we could do that at straight time. It's neither position is in my budget, but I can get more hours of work out of somebody at straight time than I can at time and a half. So that's why it would just be more cost effective to do it that way. Depending on whether we can find somebody, we thought we had the perfect person for it, but in the meantime, since we took this to committee to get this approved, we've had somebody that has left or is leaving very shortly in dispatch. So the person we had kind of thought it'd be perfect for LTE has now been offered a full-time position. So we're still trying to find another LTE.
Sheriff, would this position then be able to be moved from like one spot to another within your dispatching area? In other words, what I'm saying is if someone had to take a medical leave of absence, say for a month or 5 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever, and the fill-in would take care of that position then, and perhaps at another spot later on for another person, is that it? Or would it be one person the whole year?
Only in dispatch.
That's what I meant, in dispatch only.
Yeah, whoever fill a vacancy wherever.
You might fill a vacancy for a month at one time and maybe for another person in dispatch at another time during the year, is that it?
Yeah, the only caveat to that is that once we get them trained, I can't expect somebody to come in and work for a month or two and then take a month or two off and keep their skills sharp. So what we have done, we had an LT before. What we did, we would schedule them at least probably a couple of days within a 28-day period where we can bring them in, give somebody else something else. We got plenty of work to do, something else to do just to keep their skills fresh. So it would only be used to fill vacant shifts for dispatch if there was not one of our relief officers available to do it. In other words, if I had a higher time and a half, I would rather hire bring the LTE in.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thanks, Sheriff. Okay, we have a motion and a second, and I believe we need a voice vote on this.
Mrs. Krantz?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Piaski?
Yes.
Mr. Eckstein? Yes. Mr. Weddy?
Yes.
Mrs. Plana?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Crawford?
Yes.
Mr. Kirschner?
Yes.
All right, now we have some appointments.
There's some appointments to the Highway Traffic Safety Commission. Do you want me to read them all off?
Sure. Go
Okay.
ahead.
Sheriff David R. Peterson, Coordinator. Darlene Mastercola, Secretary. Tom Dalkey, Highway Department. Don Olander, Police Chief Representative. Robert Helt and Thomas Knopp, Wisconsin DOT Representatives. Dan Stainbrook, Wisconsin State Patrol Representative. Tim Rosine, Washera County EMS. Doug Rodenzel, Firefighters Association. Ruth Zowski, Corporation Counsel. Clyde Simonson, Watoma Area School District. And Jerry Weiland, Citizen Member.
Okay, we'll do the Library Services Committee as well.
Claude Olson, Wild Rose School District Administrator, term June 2012 through May 2015.
Motion by Eckstein,
I will second the motion.
second by Weddy to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Proclamations.
Designating the week of May 20 through 26, 2012 as Emergency Medical Services Week. Designating the month of May 2012 as Older Americans Month. Designating June 15th, 2012 as Elder Abuse Awareness Day.
Do we have a motion?
I make a motion that we,
Motion by Krenz, second by Jones, to approve the proclamation. Also, I want to add that I believe it's Saturday, isn't it, Deb, that emergency services will have, what exactly are they going to have?
it's the fun fair and street dance from 4 to 11 p.m.
So if you can make that, that's right out here in our little street out here, isn't it, Deb?
Yeah, it kind of wraps around the street and goes up to that front part.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions? All in favor? Opposed? Same sign. All right, are there any suggestions for future agenda items?
I wanted to know about the Clausen family.
Clausen family?
That she spoke about. I don't know only what she said.
Right.
Talk about that or not?
It is a zoning issue.
It's a zoning issue.
It hasn't come to zoning other than staff. It hasn't been discussed at zoning.
Okay.
Maybe tomorrow we have a zoning meeting. We might be filled in.
So, would it be all right for them to bring that back with a report next month, or let us know what's going on?
I think that's Terry's job to decide what we're going to do. You know about it, but nobody else knows about it to speak of.
Well, that's the question Bernadette had, you know.
It hasn't come before our board yet.
Hasn't came for the board, but
Okay, thank you. And we'll find out when it's time, I guess, Bernadette. All right, do we have anything else?
I just want to mention that Todd Berry will be in Watoma on June 21st. He gives a non-political overview of the state budget and economy, and it will be down in the demonstration room at 6 p.m. And I would encourage all of you to come to that. He gives a lot of good information and explains it in a way that's easily understood and will help prepare us for our next budget cycle. 6 p.m.
All right. Second, motion by Eckstein, second by Jones. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Not yet.
Bring them down to you tomorrow.
No problem.
Let's talk about it now. It's not right now.
Nice presentation, thank you.
Reach down and unplug that. It's down by your feet.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on.